Dan, really good to see you. Just tell us a little bit about Vervantis and what it does.
Vervantis is I think you use the term third-party intermediary.
Yeah, broker.
But in essence, we're an advisor, a consultancy. We cover North America, which obviously is the United States, but also encompasses Mexico and Canada. That's our prime areas. But we also do have customers that have facilities over in Europe, and so we find ourselves dipping our toe back into the UK and European markets from time to time as well.
You don't sound very American, let's just say that.
It's very interesting whenever I speak to customers and they hear my voice, they think I'm based in the UK. So I do have to say that, no, I'm a US citizen and I'm here.
You've got the flag there as well to prove
it.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm a US citizen. I'm here in Phoenix. I'm just got this weird accent to throw you, but no, so it's all good.
Okay, let's go to where obviously it's global COVID right now and what's been happening. How was the initial reaction of your clients and your customers to the onset of this?
I think the reality is, I mean, you know how it's been. The US is no different. It's affected everything. And especially in the States, where there is such a reliance on the services industry, like restaurants and bars, where folks can kind of dip in and catch up on their sport and have a beer, and that's all gone. So, from a very kind of immediate social impact, it's huge. That whole service sector, of course, millions of people out of work because those places have closed and they can't, keep things moving along. And you may not realize that a lot of the workers in that industry, they make their money on tips. So
yeah, of course, yeah.
It's incredibly tough. And I think the last figures I saw was, I think there's 16 million people now unemployed over here. And if you think about the timescale and how fast that's happened, that really gives you an idea of the impact. So when I look at my customers, and my customers are in retail, they're in healthcare, they're in oil and gas, some of them are in real estate where, they've got hundreds of shopping malls across the US. They've all been affected. They've all been impacted. And clearly they are managing as best they can to kind of get their way through this crisis and get through it. But what we see them doing is actually focusing on their efficiency so that they can come out the other side a lot stronger and a lot more focused on how they can improve their revenues and EBITDA as a result of this kind of pause, taking a breath and really examining the business to see what they can do to make things better when they come out the other side.
How has it affected your business directly and the people you work with? Hopefully, first of all, that everyone is safe and well. But apart from that, how was it for you? I mean, have you shifted to home working? What are the situation over there?
Yeah, we're very fortunate, actually. We've got an incredibly strong cloud-based infrastructure. So we actually, before it was ever mandated, we actually spoke to staff and we gave them the opportunity to work from home straight away, just out of courtesy and principle. We're saying, look, this is obviously moving around. Why don't you go work from home? You can do that seamlessly. And some of them did. And then as the mandate started to roll out, then, we just got people out, back working from home. But we just have some incredibly strong cloud-based infrastructure. It's been seamless. It really has been seamless. Customers haven't even noticed a difference. It's been, been really good. So from that side, it's been great. And I think in large part, as a business, we've recently acquired SOC 2 Type 2 attestation for the business. Now I guess it's pretty similar to an ISO 27001, but it's what American companies look for. And in essence, what that does is it attests that as a business, you've got all of your policies, processes, and everything kind of locked down so that customers know that your business is one to be trusted and their data is really safe and secure. And one of the elements of that was actually having all of your planning in place for exactly something like this.
Wow.
So it really did make it completely seamless. It was a nice transition for us to, just have that happen. And now, I am actually coming into the office because I'm the only person here. So I don't have to work from home. I can come in and I'm walking around several thousand square feet of emptiness. But it's nice to get away from home and still get on and focus. So
absolutely, and I totally get that. Let's look at where it's probably the ultimate consumer world, the American continent and North America in particular, where you are. So, as you say, you've had clients who own big retail malls. You've got people who are working in leisure and all those sectors. And here, there's been a big issue about kind of things like how much energy use that is still kind of been contracted out already, the kilovolt capacity that's there where businesses aren't being used, but other landlords charging you, all of that sort of stuff that's going on. Do you think that the American energy sector has dealt with, A, the shift from home working, so what's happened in managing demand, but B, also the fiscal changes that, where demand was and isn't now, what people want, and then where people are paying for things that are contractually obligated? I mean, they're very big on litigation where you are. How's that all worked out so far in the short term?
It's interesting. I keep up with news from all over, and I can tell you the capacity argument is one that I've heard from the European markets, and I haven't heard it too much from the US markets, but I'm sure there's going to be customers keen to understand what their utility providers will be prepared to do to help them. I can tell you that around half of the states have actually mandated that utility companies should help their customers by deferring late fees, stopping disconnections for late payment.
Right.
And that's been managed in about half of the states. But it's a very unclear picture because, again, I'm going to give you an idea of scale. The best way to think about the states is not one country, but 50 countries, right? Because every state has its own form of regulation and its own bunch of utilities and so on. We manage about 3,500 utility companies here. And they all operate in different ways. Some of those are investor owned, some of them are municipal, cooperative. It's a huge and diverse market. So when legislation kind of gets pushed out like this or mandated, the interpretation can be different between those groups of companies. So some of them will focus absolutely on residential customers, right, and supporting and helping them. Others will do residential and commercial and industrial and support them. But it's very much a patchwork. It's not clear. So I would say to anyone that's there, just check with your utility, check with your cooperative, your municipality, and see what they are prepared to do to help you at this time. But as we speak, I know that I've read that there's more and more states are moving to try and mandate and get some kind of help and protection for consumers.
We ran a story on Energy Live News about, I think it was in New York State, that they'd actually created a place for the workers for the power grid to stay. They basically put them in like a big brother house to keep the integrity of the infrastructure. How has that been in the stateside? I mean, have you had any blackouts, or has it all been fairly robust, the same as it's been here, where obviously, as you well know, the UK utility market is, a vital, they're key workers, and they've been vital to help the NHS battle through this crisis. What in terms of supply and security of supply in the US?
As far as I can tell, it's been really, really well managed. The US generally has a very strong infrastructure anyway. And I think the utility companies have been managing this incredibly well. And I'm sure there are some pockets which may be having some challenges, but I've certainly not read about it or heard about it. I think in general, it's been managed really well. And I think, in the same way that we think of our frontline workers in healthcare and to the people that collect our rubbish cans, it's these are another line of frontline workers that we don't think about really, because they are there keeping the lights on, dealing with some difficult things, and they have got to get all these personal protection equipment in place when they're dealing with customers, and also just interacting with each other, because if they don't have the benefit of a facility such as you mentioned in New York, they're coming into contact with their co-workers and having to be careful and manage things. So, but so far, it's been very good, and it's very consistent, and it's no problems so far. And I'll touch some wood there. So
absolutely. We are in every country, it's in different states and where we are, but we all hope that this ends as soon as it can, and it will end. And the question is whether it's weeks or months, and depending on different nations, there's got to be a recovery, and the recovery has got to be twofold. One is there's got to be recovery, obviously economically, but the second part is the environmental one. Now, everyone has seen that us and our activity, and the planet is great. There are fish returning to rivers, skies are less polluted. Here in London, the air is cleaner. I'm seeing sparrows in my garden. I haven't seen them in about 10 years, and I'm sure it's the same in America. So let's try and look forward to where we might be once we're out of this. Do you think that America will continue business as usual, or do you think there may be a rethink, as we think might happen over here, about what do we really need to do, and how much have we kind of messed up the environment as is, and should we carry on the way we're doing?
It's a good question. So first of all, do I think that business is going to return unchanged from this? No, it is not. I think it's opened up a lot of question marks to corporations about how they operate, where they operate, what plans they have in place for this type of thing in the future, how they're going to cope with it, and so on.
A move to digitalization much more, do you reckon?
Yes, I think so. But I tell you what I don't think is I don't know, it's interesting. Depending on what you read, depends on, if you are a home worker and you are putting heating, ventilation, air conditioning in your home for one person, that may not be as efficient as working out of an office environment where it is set up to do that. So I don't think that home working is completely the answer, but I think certainly having that flexibility to do that will certainly help. So I think it's going to be interesting coming out to see how the environmental argument kind of tackles that home working versus the efficiency of being in a space that's properly environmentally controlled, and where the corporations really have a better focus on the environmental aspects of a corporate location, like energy efficient lighting and more efficient HVAC equipment and so on and so forth.
I've been to California. I know California is a bit unusual, and I've seen huge investments in renewables. We carry stories every day across various states in America investing in renewables. Do you think the COVID crisis will push America in a particular direction one way or the other, or do you think it's just too difficult to say? Because as you said, it's almost 50 separate countries.
Yeah, I think it's too difficult to say. I think that let's just tackle that in a couple of ways. I mean, I can tell you that we personally, as an organization, we are helping our customers with more installations of things like photovoltaic cells, whether it be covered parking lots or roof cells. We are helping them with more EV charging station projects than we've ever done before. So I know that there is this impetus, but what's driving it? Is it being driven for the desire to have cleaner air, or is it more a consumer marketing brand issue? I would say actually probably more the latter. Customers are expecting this type of solution to be available to them, and they're responding. So is that a bad thing? Well, if you get the result, it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely.
What the motivation is, you just got to make sure that things start to change. And I am seeing electric vehicles all over the place here. So
really,
it clearly is making a difference. And as far as I know the whole gas guys, I think America's a big place. You know,
Scale is enormous.
It's very difficult to do anything here if you don't have a vehicle, and people need that kind of to feel they have that independence to get around, and they still, for the vast distances which do get travelled, you know, electric vehicles don't really seem to, you know, help them at the moment, at least. You know, things will change as technologies change, but at the moment, it's not quite there for most Americans, I would say. So, so no, but it is interesting how things develop.
Do you believe that, you know, if we do get a reset of where net zero ambitions are globally, you know, if we have a pause and think about this, many people have said, CEOs I've spoken to, that this could be a pivot point. Do you think that's likely, or does it still end up being what is the thing that's going to make the return in the short term that matters most?
I think for me, I'll tell you what I observe. What I observe is more and more companies are wanting to voluntarily get their sustainability credentials into the hands of external validators. And I'm talking about mechanisms like the CDP and DJSI, and we have one here for real estate called GRESB. I don't know if you have that in Europe. But there's a myriad of these mechanisms that you know, industry can report into. I am seeing more and more organizations reporting into these voluntarily. And I think it would be naive for people to think that it's purely because they want to be
seen as green. And
yeah, there is a movement here, a huge movement that's led by investors. Investors, the information that investors need to really understand an organization, it's all hidden away in those sustainability reports. They can look at the year-end financials, they can understand the strength of the company on the balance sheet. But what a sustainability report does is it gives that non-fiscal measure of operational efficiency. And they can start to compare and contrast to the peers, and they can start to understand where money's been left on the table and where the risks and opportunities are. So that's really leading the drive for change, is getting that information through. And then they're saying, well, you know, lighting doesn't become an issue of greenness, it becomes an issue of cost savings. You know, why are we wasting money on?
Absolutely.
And so that's where we're seeing this big initiative, and it really is big. There's a lot of change going on, and we you know, we assist our customers with some pretty granular, impressive sustainability reporting software that will take all of their greenhouse gas emissions data, all of that numerical information, and all of the textual information that's been reported, and allow them to report that information consistently across all these different mechanisms. Because that's another thing that trips companies up, is they do 7 reports, and if you've ever done them and you're trying to get the same response in all 7, it's difficult, and often mistakes are made, and then the investor community will mark you down because they don't feel you've got a handle on things. So
to sort of bring this to a close, do you think that, you know, I mean, we know that there'll be a big financial impact, but at the end of the day, we will have to recover, and that will involve, there is money still out there in the world, there is investment still out there. So do you see a pivotal point coming where post-COVID, as you were saying, the investors will be going, actually, I'm going to invest in these things because of they've signed up to the UN SDGs or whatever it is, or they've got these infrastructure lines out for sustainability and commitment to lower carbon, because it makes financial sense rather than just actually that's a good thing to have. So that what will drive the future investment will be almost like a line in the accounting book.
Yeah,
how green are they?
Yeah, it's exactly that. It is very much, from what I observe, it is very much, it's all about the dollars saved. Just look to when Trump exited the Paris Climate Agreement, and that accord. How did that affect industry? How did industry kind of respond to that? Business as usual.
Wow.
They are still moving on with making their organizations more efficient, because they understand that it's all about dollars saved. And if you are in such cutthroat industries as there are in retail sector, in the restaurant sector, you do not have money to waste. And so, they really are focusing hard on cost control just about everywhere. And that can come in the form of, efficiency measures. And I keep mentioning lighting, but that's just one of many. But also the controls. We never talk too much about controls in the context of efficiency, but having the ability as an organization to control when your heating and ventilation equipment comes on and off and what temperatures it's set, it's huge. And it's something which more and more companies are doing. They're understanding that this is just dollars that they need back into their business, and not, blown up the ventilation pipe. So yeah, a much bigger focus on that. We've certainly,
Go on.
I was going to say, certainly if you look at the stimulus over here, $2 trillion. This is not small scale. This is huge. And I think, if you look at the presidency, it's an election year this year, as you well know. And I think it's been difficult because the president has worked hard to try and, help businesses through all sorts of mechanisms. We've had, I think it was $10 trillion of tax incentives over a 10-year period were given back to help companies reinvest. He's hammered on the Mexico and Canadian trade agreements, and China is well publicized. So what he's seen in this crisis is, a lot of that hard work being affected. And I think what you saw was probably, the disappointment that when he started to realize that all of this work was going to go out the window as the corporate America had to shut down. But I think the stimulus had to do a couple of things. It had to kind of bring, as quickly as possible, relief to companies and people, to help them kind of get through this situation and bounce back.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is, as part of further stimulus, is how that might start to be put towards renewable incentives to help companies kind of get this investment going back into renewables. So it'd be nice to see if there was some kind of stimulus that's kind of carved out to do and help the industry more generally. So it'll be, we'll see what happens, but it's certainly been, the government is trying to move incredibly fast to help companies, to help people. And my family and a lot of other families yesterday received their stimulus checks.
Wow.
So already they're coming through. So I think, it is happening. And I think, in an election year, it's interesting that I think he's going to be judged more on how he deals with this crisis and gets the people through it than he will on anything he's done over the last 4 years. Whether you're a fan or not, it's certainly been an interesting 4 years, and whether people want another 4 years of this type of presidency.
We'll have to wait and see. My last question to you, and I get everything you've said there, and it makes total sense. Do you think we're a bit more emotional over here in the UK and Europe about the environmentals, that we want to go to net zero because we think it's a better thing to do, whereas in America it's more about, does this make financial sense? Do you think there's that slight element where, whether it's romantic or we're more eco-conscious, or we're just culturally different, that is driving our ambition more than the dollars, as you said over there?
I think it would be wrong for me to say that an awful lot of people across the United States are passionate about the environment. They are passionate about, making sure we live in a cleaner, greener world, and leave it for our generations to come a better place than perhaps it is now. And if you look across the United States, you'll see some states embracing this type of policy change more than others. If you look at California, for example, the Californian market, they're incredibly health conscious. They are incredibly green. It's very difficult to, if you are thinking about building a natural gas-fired plant in California, think again. It's that type of thing is gone. It's not something that they're going to easily kind of mandate. So, they're balancing renewable energy with security of supply, and they're having all the challenges that go with that. And then you'll have other states like Texas, for example, where it's just not as important to them. They are going to look firmly at the dollars to any scheme to make sure it makes financial sense. And subsidies is not something that they like to hear too much about. If it can't wash its own face, no. So I think and that's what you're going to find across the states.
And we're a bit more emotional back over here.
A little bit more emotional, yeah, a little bit more emotional. Except for California, I think California is very, very much like the the European mentality, yeah. But otherwise, we're not quite as emotional.
Well, Dan, stay safe, keep flying the flag, and really good to talk to you.
And you, thanks for having me on, Sumit.